Harwich Conservation Commission on October 4th, 2023 at the Don B. Griffin Room at Harwich Town Hall. This is a hybrid meeting. People can participate by viewing on the Harwich cable channel, which is now Channel 8, I believe, or log into the GoToMeeting. Instructions for logging in to the GoToMeeting or on the agenda, which can be found on the Conservation Commission webpage on the town website. We're going to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is a request for an amended order of conditions for Harwich Conservation Trust, Cold Brook Preserve, map 23, parcels C3-2, C1-0, and C1-1 for additional work for public access.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, members of the Conservation Commission, for the opportunity to join your meeting tonight. Michael Locke, Executive Director of the nonprofit Harwich Conservation Trust. Just by way of background for the viewers, your local land trust in town, founded in 1988. This is the 35th anniversary year. Folks from all walks of life 35 years ago joined together to form the Harwich Conservation Trust to preserve land that protects water quality and wildlife habitat, scenic views and walking trails, all of those environmental elements which create a unique quality of life here on this special corner of the Cape. We're here to seek your approval of an amended order of conditions for the Cold Brook site, specifically at 203 Bank Street. Here with us tonight, representing the Harwich Conservation Trust Board of Trustees, is Tom Evans, President, and one of our project partners, Harwich Fire Association, represented by Norm Clark here. We also have representing us BSC Group with Brian and Lindsay virtually. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of background on this project and then open it up to questions, and Brian and Lindsay are happy to help answer any questions. So recall about a year ago, we were before you seeking an order of conditions for the Cold Brook Ecological Restoration Project, series of 3 meetings, and the order of conditions was approved. I'm happy to report that Sumco Eco Contracting is now in the construction phase there at the Cold Brook site. 3 major goals. One of which is to improve water quality, and that's why town meeting voters in 2017 approved funds toward the Eco Restoration Project with a goal of naturally reducing the amount of nitrogen in the surface water of Cold Brook and the groundwater as it flows to Saquatucket Harbor. By naturally reducing that nitrogen, it saves taxpayer dollars over time by reducing the need for costly wastewater infrastructure, sewering. Another goal is to enhance wildlife habitat. And a third is to enhance the visitor experience. And that's really the main objective with this seeking an amended order of conditions, to improve the parking access and also create a wheelchair accessible connector trail to the envisioned half-mile wheelchair accessible loop to the south, as well as create a visitor overlook at 203 Bank Street for folks that want to take their time and enjoy the new views and might not have enough time in their schedule to explore the larger trail network. And all of that is in the plan in the materials submitted to you. That's the background. Do Brian or Lindsay want to add anything?
I think you got it covered. Thank you. That was excellent.
The only thing I would like to add, and hi, for the record, my name is Brian Yurgation, professional engineer with BSC Group. One of the important things that we are doing here is we're improving water quality. As Mike stated at the outset, one of the goals of this project is to do that. And through the incorporation of infiltration basins and sediment forebays, bioretention, we are making big improvements in the water quality to a site which presently has no stormwater management or treatment. Thank you.
Okay, show. Amy?
As stated, this project is for installation of 2 bioretention areas and 1 infiltration basin south of the parking lot. Existing parking lot would be updated to have 15 to 20 improved parking spaces. Currently, it's kind of an ad hoc parking over there. Well, right now, it's under construction, so nobody's parking there except for the machines. And then it also would include an accessible trail connection from the parking area to the Coldbrook Trail Network, which we already approved, the larger Coldbrook project. So this is just the area around the old fire station and south of it. All 88 trails would be pervious per the existing order of conditions. This project in front of you tonight also includes invasive species removal and creation of coastal meadow habitat and other restoration plantings. They are requesting another variance, even though they requested one under the original filing. This is an amendment request, as some work will take place in the 50-foot buffer. There's currently trails that go through the 50-foot buffer, so it's improvement of those trails to make them compatible. Some of this work overlaps with what you've already permitted. Big picture, there's going to be less square footage based on the numbers from the BSC Group plans. There'll be less square footage of walking trails and gravel pathways in the 50-foot buffer when finished compared to pre-construction. There is more in the 50 to 100, but in general, I think this project is going to provide a benefit to the site. It's going to provide better stormwater control. It's going to improve public access, which is a goal, but also improve habitat, wildlife habitat, in creation of that more of a meadow type habitat. I recommend granting the variance for the work and approval of the project, of the amendment.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the commissioners, starting with Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amy, quick question on the need for a variance. If there's less walking paths being constructed in the 0 to 50, why is a variance needed?
Still work in the 0 to 50, and it's new work that we didn't approve under the original order of conditions. So the way our bylaw reads is that any work in the 0 to 50 requires. So even though it's less, to be on the safe side, I suggested they request a variance.
Okay. And I do think it's consistent with our variance language, hardship for ADA, compatible pathways. So I do think it connects there as we ruled before. So I have no concerns.
You all set?
Yes, thanks.
Sophia?
No questions, thank you.
No comments.
Jim?
No comments. No comment.
I have no questions or comments myself, so.
Might be from the audience.
Yes, so does anyone in the room have questions or comments? Hearing none, it doesn't look,
I have one point of clarification to add. So per the design produced by BSC Group in collaboration with Harwich Conservation Trust and Harwich Fire Association, the number of parking spaces that will be much better defined rather than, as Amy correctly pointed out, it's not very efficient right now. it would be about 30 spaces,
Oh,
just to be clear. About 15 on one side,
okay.
and then about 15 on the other, including 4 handicap spaces within that roughly 30 number. Just wanted to make that clear. Yeah.
So actually, this provokes a question on my part, which is, my understanding from looking at this is that it is pervious, but you're demarking parking spaces. What is the surface on which you are demarking parking places? How does that work? Do you understand the question?
Are you asking,
Yeah, Brian or Lindsay, do you want to answer that?
are you, just to clarify, are you asking what the parking spaces will be made out of?
How you're gonna define them, delineate
How do you
them?
define them, given that it's, well, what is the pervious material that is going to be used for that parking area? And if it's gravel or something similar, how do you demarc parking places?
So it is a crushed bluestone surface that's proposed, and I agree with you. You cannot, use paint striping. So the traditional way to handle that would be with curb stops or wheel stops rather.
Okay. That's all. Thank you. Anything more? Anybody have anything more?
Just quick, the handicap parking spaces, do they have to be bituminous or concrete, hard surface?
My understanding, Brian and Lindsay, in answer to Alan's question, is that they will be a different surface to meet ADA standards. Is that right?
Correct. They're proposed a pervious paver, which is a concrete type of material, and it has, it does have sand swept joints typically.
Thank you.
So it still allows water to penetrate through, but yet it's a durable, hard surface, which is appropriate for ADA access.
Anything more? Motion.
Certainly. I will move that we approve the request for amended order of conditions and grant a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer for the Harwich Conservation Trust Colebrook Preserve, map 23, parcel C3-2, comma, C1-0 and C1-1.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain. Abstain.
So that's 402. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. It's an exciting project.
Very. At some point, when it's appropriate with Sumco and yourselves, it would be really great to do a commission site visit out there to see the progress that's happening.
That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, look forward to
We'll
that.
arrange it.
Okay, thanks, Amy.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we have a notice of intent for 2 Pilgrim Road, map 7, parcel C16, for a front porch and second floor balcony addition.
Good evening, David Clark, Clark Engineering, on behalf of the applicant. What they're proposing is a porch addition off the east side of the house. The resource areas that are involved are coastal beach and coastal dune. The lot is quite small, it's 100 by 100, and it's pretty much developed from property line to property line. It was created in 1925. It's been developed since approximately that time. So it's an old property, fully developed. The porch addition is within an existing foundation planting area. The addition is 242 square feet. The applicants are proposing to mitigate that by removing 262 square feet of brick steppers, footpath that goes from the front door around the south side of the house to the deck, so we'll be removing that. 203 square feet to be removed. So at the end of the day, there's no increase in site coverage on this property from the proposed work. As far as performance standards for Coastal Beach, has no impact on it, in that the addition is separated from the beach by the dwelling, and so therefore it has no effect on the ability of the dune to be a source of sediment for the abutting beach. We feel this project meets the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act. The project did require relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they've already been and received that approval. So be happy to answer questions.
Amy?
Can you repeat how many square feet is the proposed addition?
The addition is, the porch is 242 square feet. And a portion of that is over the existing front step.
Okay,
So that removal of the step and the walkway makes the project a wash as far
Okay.
as
just
site
making sure.
coverage. Yeah.
Thanks. I don't have any questions on the project itself. This, it's an 100 by 100 foot property that is actually not beachfront. It's Association Beach in front of it. And it's pretty much ensconced in timber retaining wall, and raised up a little bit. The addition in it, even though it's within the 50-foot buffer, it's on the opposite side of, or the opposing side of the house from the water. The dune that it's within the 50-foot buffer zone to is like the dune on the edge of a road, the edge of the base of Pilgrim Road. And there's a retaining wall, not part of the bulkhead, but a stone retaining wall, closer to the resource than this addition would be. So I would recommend approval for variance for work in the 0 to 50. They're removing a brick walkway, very tightly brick walkway, that's closer to the resource area than this proposed addition, which is pretty much where foundation plantings are now, again, within a walled area to begin with. So I'd recommend approval of the project and granting of the variance. Just to let the commission know, I did have a chance to speak with the homeowner prior to the meeting, and I asked the question, which I had posed in my site summaries, about there being a large number of boats, canoes, kayaks, sunfish, a Hobie cat, being stored on the beach and in the dunes nearby. Several were right adjacent to this property at the toe of the bulkhead, so I asked him about it. He did confess one of them is his, but the rest are not. There's, I would estimate, 15 to 20 boats between his property and the dune fields to the west. And this is a combination of Pilgrim Road Beach Association and Air Lane Beach Association. Also, somewhere after 2018, somebody just to the southwest of this house, and the owner says it was not him, the owner of this property says it wasn't him, on association property, a section of beach grass was removed and brought down just to sand, and there seasonally is a bar with some chairs that is put out evidently for neighbors to come enjoy. So this is what I would recommend. This has to do with this, but, because we're talking about it, but is that the commission authorized me to send letters to each of those associations telling them to remove their vessels, some of which looks like they've been there for a long time, and that they will have to replant that area where all the vegetation was removed this winter with American beach grass. So you can do that after this, but that's my recommendation. And my recommendation for this project is to approve and grant the variance with the condition, and I talked to the homeowner about it today, of no fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides.
Thank you. Wayne?
No comment.
No comment.
Alan? No comment. Sophia?
No comment.
Brad?
Got a couple. Amy, do we have confirmation that all these structures on the property were properly permitted in the first place?
We have,
The masonry way?
yep,
Right, okay. That's always a concern with these properties that seeking to switch out structures in 0 to 50. In
yeah,
this case,
no,
okay,
it was on a previous plan.
yep. Second question is, what's going to take place of the footprint of the masonry walkway? What will be there instead of the walkway?
We intend to loam and seed it to match the rest of the yard.
Yeah, so I do have a concern with that. To me, you've got a new porch structure going in, and we're hearing that it's a wash, but we're putting in a lawn in its place. The photographs from Google Earth showed this lawn has been, clearly cultured, maintained, fertilized over time. So I have a concern with that. Has there been any discussion, as it's been prepared, about putting in other types of plantings in that footprint?
I haven't had discussions with them.
Well, that's what I would request. It is requesting a variance. I understand that there's no real performance standard problems with this, but to me, putting in a lawn isn't really a wash in this case. So I would like to see some native plantings in that space.
Maybe not exactly in that, because it's kind of a weird walkway space, but thinking up against the bulkhead or something.
Something so it's just not, an increase in the lawn, which,
Mhm.
we're getting really inadequate compliance to our
Mhm.
no fertilizer, no pesticide regulations. So I have concerns that what I'm seeing on Google Earth will just continue over a larger space.
Well, if you're done, I will comment. Okay.
Last comment is I do agree with Amy's recommendation for the beach grass damage.
So having visited the site up close, it is very clear what you're saying you see on Google Earth, that it is a monoculture, clearly fertilizer and probably herbicides have been used, as most of the lawns in the neighborhood are like that. They're all bright green, which shouldn't be. I agree, it's a problem. It really is a problem. And my concern is, as you say, Brad, we have problems with compliance. We tell people they can't do it, but we don't. It's hard to enforce that, and it's part of the problem in Nantucket Sound. I agree with you. So I'm not sure what you do about it here, except I think you have a reasonable suggestion. If you could take that, how many square feet is it?
203.
203 square feet of walkway, and do some native planting beds up against the bulkhead.
Yeah,
And when
I don't,
you
I think
replant-
that's a reasonable request in that what's being lost is foundation plantings, which don't need as much care as a turf lawn, so, I think
Not
it's
as
a
much, but in my experience, excuse me for interrupting, I mean, foundation plantings like hydrangeas which I believe there are a lot of hydrangeas on that property, do get fed, and you're so close to the resource that is a problem as well. They don't get fed perhaps as much as an open lawn, but it's all somewhat problematic. So more native plantings that don't require any of that, feathers, for example. I don't know, Brad, would you be happy if they agreed to put whatever it is, 250 square feet of native plantings somewhere where Amy agrees is a good place on that property?
There is no good place, because it's gonna be vertically separated from the resource area, so, because of the bulkhead. But I see the point of reducing a nutrient load from
Yeah,
the
you could
property.
decrease lawn.
That's probably gonna be the only benefit.
Might be able to do
Which-
some help for pollinators or something.
Yeah.
All those are good things. And the other part would be, this would be conditioned to, for areas where you're reseeding, it would be a native mix, again, approved by Amy, not whatever it is that gets planted for a bright green lawn that is fed and treated with herbicides. And hopefully the result of that would be seeing the whole lawn area transition to a lower impact lawn.
What we typically would condition is, if a lawn needs to be overseeded as it changes to a more natural lawn, that it has to be overseeded with a native mix.
Okay.
I'm fine with that if you want me to, if you want to see an actual plan for the 203 square feet, or if you want, I'm more than happy to work with Mr. Clark and the owner on, but it would be either along the bulkhead facing south and then some going north-south along that bulkhead there as well.
Okay, further comments? Anybody else care to comment? Okay, well, can we construct a motion?
Let me start, Jack. Okay, I would like to move that we approve the notice of intent and grant a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer for 2 Pilgrim Road, map 7, parcel C16, subject to the following conditions. 1, that no fertilizers or chemicals be used on the property going forward. 2, that areas to be reseeded be done with a native seed mix, and that the mitigation planting be done with native plantings.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. That's,
David, can you get me a revision within a week or so I can draft the conditions?
With a plant list, or
Yeah.
just,
I'd like on the plan for you to sketch the area
Yep.
and then a plant list and quantities. And I
I'll
can,
see what I can do.
if you need a hand, let me know. But I think you have a native plant lady.
Oh, I know several of them, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah,
All right, thank you very much.
thanks.
thank you. Next, we have a request for an extension to orders of conditions for, an order of conditions for 64 Snow Inn Road, Realty Trust, 0 Snow Inn Road, map 15, parcel N8-B for vegetation management and bank stabilization. Who do we have anyone here?
No, I'm gonna speak to this one and the next one. They'd like a 1-year extension in order to complete the annual required monitoring reports and to provide the native vegetation on the upper bank an additional season to establish prior to closing it out. It's going very well. This was part one of a two-part project. The original order of conditions was for invasive removal and bank stabilization with a wide variety of native plants on Witchmere Harbor. And the second part was the dock, which was under its own filing. So this is just for the vegetation work, and I would recommend a one-year extension.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Just briefly, it looks okay. It was kind of barren earlier in the season. It's
Yep, it's looking better. They had to reseed it. They had to do some replanting. There was a really big invasive seed bank there that they had to deal with, and then the drought last year gave it a hard time, but it's doing much better
Yep.
now.
honeysuckle, or what is that? Bittersweet, I guess?
There was bittersweet, honeysuckle, rugosa rose. I think there was porcelain berry in there. It was everything.
Thanks.
Sophia? Alan?
No questions.
I have nothing. Care to make a motion, sir?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the extension of the order of conditions for 64 Snow Inn Road Realty Trust, 0 Snow Inn Road, map 15, parcel N8-B, for a period of 1 year.
I'll second that.
Motion. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
6-0. Next is a request for an extension to order of conditions for 3 Skinnequit Road, map 25, parcel C3-18, SE 32-2381, which was an after-the-fact filing for cutting of vegetation, staircase, dock, and playground. Amy?
If you recall, the previous owners of this property were the ones who did the cutting of the vegetation. They didn't do any work for almost 3 years and kind of caught not doing anything to fix it. The time the property was being transferred, the new owners accepted that responsibility. They put a little bit away and aside the previous owners to pay for it, but Blue Flax Design has been on the project for 6 months to a year now, doing the work. They need another year. The invasives have been removed and corrective pruning started. I did allow them to remove a couple small saplings that were starting to grow up really close to the deck. They would just be hazardous as they grew up. This fall and the spring, they're going to be doing the additional plantings that they need to do, but the hillside itself is in great shape with a ton of variety coming in naturally back from what was cut. So they didn't actually have to plant as much as they originally did. So I'd recommend a 1-year extension.
Any discussion? Add anything?
Thanks.
Okay, can we have a motion, please?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the request for the extension of the order of conditions for 3 Skinnequit Road, map 25, parcel C3-18, SE 32-2381, for a period of 1 year.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? 6-0. Next is a request for an extension for an order of conditions for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2, SE 32-2269 for maintenance dredging.
You can bring another seat up, that's fine. You can move that mic back a little bit too if it's in your way.
Good evening, commissioners. John Bologna of Coastal Engineering, Mike Charlotte, and
Tucker Dutcher, Director of Engineering. Managing Director of Richmond Beach Club.
so, yeah, we have 3 matters here before you. It's kind of really kind of clean up permits. closing out work that's been done over the past several years. The first one is the request for the extension of the dredge permit for the harbor. So that was actually a separate project that was already completed. You asked for as-built or the post-dredge survey, which we have forwarded. So Amy and I did speak about this matter. Essentially, the owners would like to extend it because it's a maintenance dredging. Now, it does say in that order conditions that it's an ongoing condition. So it's really just a matter of what's the best way to handle the filing of that. It's got a valid Chapter 91 license, water quality certification, and so forth. So it's really just keeping that permit in force for future maintenance dredging. There's really no plans to do any dredging at the moment, but, you know, things change, as everybody knows. So it's really just a matter of housekeeping there to clean that up. So, Amy, if you wanted to add to that.
You're correct. We can either handle it, the commission can either extend it, or, you know, if you choose to extend it, you can extend it for 3 years, or it can be a ongoing condition to be allowed to maintenance dredge with all the other conditions that go along with the dredge permit would also would also stay active. But just touching on the approved plan versus the post-dredge survey. As you know, when you go out and dredge, nothing is exactly perfect how you want it. You're working in the water. So, but they are within the parameters. They were allowed to dredge to a depth of -6 with an allowable 1 foot over dredge. There were areas that were dredged to a -7, but this was allowable. In some areas of the dredge footprint, it appears some areas were a little shallower, some areas were a little deeper as proposed, compared to what was approved, but all within the dredge footprint and all within their limit. Is the sand reused typically when it's done? Like when the town does ours too of the channel, it's
Correct.
beneficial reuse. I tried to load the original plan into your Dropbox, but I was having an argument with the plotter, so was not able to do that, but you have your, the post-dredge survey. So it's whatever the commission is most comfortable with. If you would prefer a 3-year extension or a certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions allowing for maintenance dredging, it's up to you.
Okay.
I think a 3-year extension would work fine for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would also prefer a 3-year extension.
I'm fine with that, too.
No comment.
Couple questions. Amy, what is the extension history to this order of condition?
Give me a minute. This order was issued in 2016.
Yeah. So this would be the second extension or third?
I might have been partially under COVID too, but this would be the second extension.
Yep. Okay, so I think I typically favor 2 extensions of this type, and you know, when you get to have like a 10-year period from the original order, the commission's discussed this before, you know, how to approach extensions. I think maybe the next time after this, it probably should be a resubmittal. You know, that's my feeling anyways on these. To extend these things indefinitely, I don't think is always a good idea because conditions change. So I don't think I have a problem with a second extension on this. So this is really in the narrows for the outlet channel. And was the work done in 2019?
Which work was that?
The dredge, the last one?
The last dredging?
That's when your post-dredge survey said.
Yeah, the post-dredge survey was done, I think, a year after the work was completed. So,
The
It's
survey's
supposed to
dated
be done more
the 2019?
last week. Is that the date of the
No, that's the
survey?
date, well, that's the date of the plan.
Construction of the plan.
There's a note on there that says something about 2019, Brad, based on data from 2019.
Yep.
Yeah, essentially what happened, the post-dredge survey was completed, but it was never put down on a plan, so it was, it was in the CAD file essentially, so, it just got reproduced and stamped for the submittal as per, the commission's request.
Yeah,
So typically, we do want a post-dredge survey within 30 days, not a year after. Conditions change drastically in a year.
Yeah, understood.
do you have a sense of the frequency at which this channel has to be dredged?
Not really. I mean, things are quite dynamic there, and actually, we'll be talking in a minute about the other project there. It's, actually, that mitigation is beneficial to capturing sand that's drifting across,
Yeah,
and it's not finding its way into the channel as much. So, I mean, it's so dynamic out there, but it is a protected inlet, so it doesn't really have the sediment sources you normally would see,
yeah.
in other inlets. So, yeah, I think it's just, it's okay now. There's really no need to dredge, but, just to be able to keep the permit open. I mean, as you all know, the permitting is quite extensive. There's a Corps of Engineers permit as well
Right.
that has to be reapplied for after 10 years. The Chapter 91 license is still valid, but, once you hit those expiration dates, then you've got to refile, as well, and then reapply to the Corps of Engineers and,
Yeah. Is the Corps a 10-year permit?
yes, a 10-year permit.
Yeah, so maybe sync that up with that process.
Yeah. that makes
It's
sense.
gonna, yeah, because if it was a 2016 permit, in 2026, it's gonna
Yeah,
Mhm.
make sense.
that makes sense to me. And I asked about the frequency, because to my eye, that outer channel really silted in this year versus last year. And so I'm curious if that was probably part of the dredging footprint in 2019. And yeah, it really shoaled up along the beach side across, from the end. Just really big difference from last year to this year. And so, yeah, getting a handle on the frequency, I think, is interesting, and no question, this channel has to be maintained, so that's not, if it's not maintained, it'll be a hazard to navigation, so I hope you don't mind me asking a few questions.
No,
It's-
not at all.
It's interesting to see this area over time.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that.
And,
It's a busy harbor.
Yeah,
I'm curious how much sand got pushed in during the December storm where it came straight out of the south, and how everybody had so much erosion.
yeah.
I'm curious how it,
Been it, because from last year, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, then, start boating in late May, and all of a sudden, it was really bad at the outlet. So, and just a point of education to the commissioners, I think we've had some discussions on extensions before, and I think every type of project's different, but to just have indefinite extensions isn't always a good idea. So we've talked about, our bylaws don't limit the number, I don't believe. So we've talked about changing that, but, I'm certainly comfortable with two extensions on a project like
yeah,
this.
some towns do limit it.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have other questions, which I'm curious as to how, both on an administrative level, but also just on a physical level, how this dredging permit and dredging program interacts with other dredging that clearly has to go on there. I mean, the dredge footprint only goes halfway across that channel. Clearly, someone else is taking care of the other part. I don't actually understand how you even make that work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're responsible for keeping the dredge footprint to within a foot or so of what you've been permitted for, then the town is in there, right next to where your footprint is, I assume. I don't know how often the town dredges that particular area, but it's gotta be a problem.
Yeah,
How does that
that's actually
work?
an interesting area. Witchmere, as you know, was an inlet that went,
Right.
did not have access to
Salt
water. It
pond,
was
yeah.
actually, it's a kettle pond. And then, late 1800s, the owners petitioned the state to make the breakthrough to get out to
Right.
the water. And so if you look at the deed, actually, the owners on either side own halfway to the middle of the harbor, because that's the way the title and fee was originally. So the Stone Horse owns halfway, and, the Witchmere owns the other halfway.
Oh, so it isn't the town, it's Stone Horse?
Well, yeah, but it's underwater now, so it's a resource, so it's kind of under the town jurisdiction, the state jurisdiction as well as the, Corps of Engineers, because it's a federal waterway now. So, it's just kind of an interesting anomaly, that it was set up that way, because there was a strip of land before separating the Witchmere Harbor from Nantucket Sound. then when they broke it open, then they built the jetty, and then they extended the jetty and so forth. So, yeah, and I think we're certainly working with the Waterways Commission and with John Rendon, the harbor master, on coordinating that part of it, because I think he's been really more focused on the outer harbor parts, and I know that the Stone Horse and Harwich Boat Works as well, has had their own dredge permits for their own areas as well, so it's a little bit of a symbiotic relationship. I mean, Mike, I don't know if you want to talk to this in terms of relationships with the neighbors.
Yeah, I think John said it well. I mean, we typically try to coordinate it, certainly not more than 3 years at the earliest in dredging, and we try and coordinate it with John Rendon, the harbor master, to understand where it may be happening in the future, because it's not an annual cycle.
It's usually every 2 to 3 years.
It's at least every 2, more likely 3.
What,
Yeah, it
when is
depend-
every 2 to 3 years? When?
When
dredging.
when the county dredge does the outer harbor and outer channel for the town of Harwich. And
And there's a dredging permit that Stone Horse has, which is the adjacent property, right? And do you coordinate and dredge at the same time? Do you two dredge at the same time? I don't see how else you can make it.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a mutual interest in maintaining the channel. So, I mean, and again, I mean, all this applicant could do is just control what's in their footprint, let's say.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Okay,
Make a motion.
yeah, hearing nothing else, I will make a motion that we approve the extension of the order of conditions for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2, SE 32-2269 for a period of 3 years.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
6-0, okay. Next, we have a request for a certificate of compliance. Well, we have two, shall we deal with these one at a time?
yeah, they're two different
Okay, so
activities.
first we'll do request for certificate of compliance for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2, SE 32-2383, for proposed building and hardscape modifications.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, again, it's just kind of cleaning up the permits. The work has been completed, and it's been in operation. It's a successful project, and really, we're before you to obtain certificate of compliance for this one and the next one as well. Just kind of clean up the permits and obtain the issues, their certificates. So we're before you requesting the certificate of compliance for the proposed building and hardscaping modifications on this one, and then the next one is for the tiki bar and the mitigation plantings.
Amy?
So this one is for the beach club, that you permitted the demo and complete rebuild of the beach club, the pools, everything a couple of years ago. I would say, the project is in compliance, and it's looking really good compared to, previously where there's a lot more concrete, a lot less plantings. It's much more vegetated, and the plants are doing well. I believe they had to replace some in the past, but they replace, if something dies, you replace it. You don't want it to be out there. So I would recommend a certificate of compliance with the ongoing conditions of no chemical usage, fertilizers or whatnot. We did get something very brief from McNamara Brothers about treatment of the property. It does say lawn areas are spot sprayed when needed, which technically is not in alignment with our orders of conditions. There was no explanation of what they're spraying with. They say they don't do anything on the microclover lawn, which I believe is your wedding lawn, right?
Yes, the grand lawn.
But the grand lawn.
Yep.
And the rest is hand pulled. So, it's an improvement, but, the fact that they put that they're doing spot treatment, they really shouldn't be doing anything. I'm curious what their
Are
spot
you
trees.
referring to for at the Grand Lawn?
It just said, so, it was very brief what McNamara
I know.
had written, and it was just, oh, okay.
What they use.
Oh, what they
But this is not
use.
used on the Grand Lawn or the hydrangea lawn, the microclover.
So just for reference, the hydrangea lawn's down by the dock.
Yep.
And that has the player's vest, or the
Yeah,
clover, micro clover.
yeah,
And
the
then
micro clover.
What we call the grand lawn is located just adjacent to the main pool deck, the beach club entrance.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Mark. So where are they spot spraying? Do we
They
know?
are, what they were referring to, I talked to Chris, was beds, planting beds. And between the structured lawn parking, we have gravel. And behind the Harbor Club on the north end, we have a little gravel spot that's where they're spot spraying, hand picking, nothing to do with the lawn area.
And nothing actually to do with this,
Pool
with the beach club?
No, Beach Club is all hand picked.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, what we're missing here is a as-built plan, so, I mean, you're talking about these areas, I have no clue where they are.
Sorry,
I don't spend time.
They,
there.
we have them, but normally we don't ask for many
Well,
copies
so-
of them.
So, the basic question is, this is the sort of thing that I would never agree be applied to anything in our jurisdiction. So if this is somewhere, if you're applying this stuff somewhere within our jurisdiction, I don't agree that that's appropriate or allowable. I mean, 2,4-B,
It does say in the,
noxious herbicides, well, we would never agree to that. I would never agree to that.
it doesn't just say that it's not to be in the beach club area. It does say any areas within Conservation Commission jurisdiction on the site are not allowed to have fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides.
I mean, I appreciate that you've been forthcoming and shown us exactly what you're doing here,
Mhm.
but I've stepped in. Let's let other commissioners speak. Sophia seems ready to talk.
A question, so on the microclover lawn, nothing's applied.
Correct.
I guess I just wonder why maybe the other lawn areas couldn't be microclover if it doesn't require this stuff.
I guess just to be clear, what other lawn areas? Right now, we have the hydrangea lawn, which I know you don't have an as-built in front of you, but the hydrangea lawn was the first place that we tested. I think we're the first in the town of Harwich too to do this successfully, because it requires very little water, it's very sustainable, doesn't need any fertilizer, and has performed very well, and that's actually down in our wedding lawn, which is located down by the Richmond Harbor outlet. And then the second area that we did, it was outside the beach club entrance as
Yeah.
well.
They were only required to do, it was part of other projects too. They were only required to do certain areas. And at the time, it was really to be a test to see how well it worked. I mean, we'd love, if it's working well, for you to use it other places. But, anyway,
Okay, so these are in the beds and the other lawn, sorry.
This is just for the non-microclover lawn areas, grass, structured parking.
Yeah, okay.
in the parking areas,
We have grass parking.
Grass parking.
grass parking. yeah.
Structured parking, grass, yes. That's
Right.
the only place that's applied.
Gotcha.
So could you clarify what the hydrangea lawn is? It sounds like an oxymoron to me. Hydrangeas are a lawn.
So it's located just adjacent to the dock. I don't know if you have an as-built or something we can use as a reference point.
I have an
It's
as-built,
on
but
the
it just shows
easternmost point,
this.
next to where Thompson's Clam Bar, where the main venue is located along that channel. There's a grass area, which is now the player's best, located literally, I don't know the square footage, but it might be easier to pull up something here to show you, but it's a wedding ceremony lawn.
I have one plan if you want to
So
look
it's
at it.
surrounded by hydrangeas, that's why you're calling it hydrangea.
There's a wall of hydrangeas, and it happens to be called hydrangea
So
lawn
that's what I was
for
looking for, is like a
15, 20,
grand
back to the
scheme
Dr.
that I
Fennel
don't have.
era.
You can give it to them, I know what you're talking about.
This doesn't show the area that Mike's talking about, but it's up in this area in here.
Yeah.
I see, uh-huh, right, it's right on the channel.
But no hydrangeas. Yeah, there's, to be clear, there's no fertilizer that's applied to the hydrangea bed that aligns that retaining wall along.
But you are applying herbicides within the jurisdictional area, within the 100-foot buffer to whatever resources we're talking about here. Is that correct?
It sounds like they're applying spot spraying it to the structured lawn, to the structured
Structured.
parking,
Yes.
which then that gets, that's being used. They're doing that.
Yes.
It's very easy to go back to McNamara and have them cease doing that. It's not, it's very easy to go back to McNamara Brothers, who's the current landscaper, and tell them that they're no longer permitted to use that.
Use any herbicides,
Any.
not find a replacement herbicide,
Correct,
no herbicide.
correct.
With some sort of written agreement, a very short written agreement that
Make it-
we could have
Make it
for the
crystal clear,
file
Chris.
suffice.
This would be in the, the area that Tucker is referencing would be down in the main parking area, which is flood. And I'm not sure where that falls within the resource, but it's.
It's technically a resource
yeah,
itself.
so-
The whole, the vast
So-
majority of your property,
Happy to
sorry.
put it in writing for you, and make sure it's clear both on our behalf as well as on behalf of the landscaper.
Sounds good.
And if there are other practices that, we can talk about that don't involve chemical application for maintenance, I'm happy to work with you.
So, you're asking, for a certificate of compliance, but you're not in compliance, so. do
How
have
would
any
you-
recommendations?
Yeah, I would say let's hold off on that until we get something in writing from Witchmere/McNamara about that. But is that doable?
Yeah, of course. That's a tomorrow item.
We'll give you like a month, okay?
It's a tomorrow item.
Okay. Does that sound good, Commission?
Yeah, it does to me.
So we're gonna table that one for the time being?
Yeah.
I'll put it on the next agenda, but
Okay,
if we get it soon, so.
we don't need to vote to table this, right? We'll just.
No,
move
you don't
on.
need to vote on
Okay,
that. The next one, maybe.
so, the next item here is a request for a certificate of compliance, 23 Snowland Road, map 8, parcel P2, SE 32-2387, for seasonal deck, tiki bar, lockers, and mitigation plantings. Yes, please.
Shall I, or you?
I can if you,
Big plan, look, sorry, knowing that you needed some more time. Apply some more.
I can, here, Wayne, you and I can share.
Okay.
The masked ones can share.
Okay, I see, you guys wanna look at this?
There's the beach club up here. So the main rectangular was approved. This was in excess here.
Maybe this helpful.
More for them, I'll take it for your, thank you, file. Thank you.
It's okay to share.
Do you want me to walk through a little history? I don't mind. Okay. So the commission approved an after-the-fact permit for the tiki bar and decking around it with the storage lockers and the fire pits. Had been installed, the commission noticed it, they came back for an after-the-fact permit. They were required for the area to be mitigated roughly with 10,000 square feet of beach grass planting in their beach area. And then during the last year with the habitat management plan, they were approved to move a large section of the beach grass to the most eastern section, which is right up against the channel, which has helped prevent excess sand from just going over the top. So they're looking for a sort of compliance. Upon the inspection for a certificate of compliance, I noticed that there was additional decking that had been put adjacent to the Tiki Beach Bar than what we permitted. And there's also roughly 4,000 square feet of additional plantings. So they're looking for a certificate of compliance for what's out there currently. It is larger than what you permitted. There's extra mitigation as well. I am concerned about, changes being made after permits are being issued, and especially this was an after-the-fact permit to begin with, and then additional changes were made. So I do have concern with that. Overall, I do think the mitigation, you can speak to how much the birds love it and how much better habitat it's made down there, and also the sand you're capturing. And I think the mitigation that they provided is greater than any detriment that the beach bar, the Tiki Bar is, which is very up close to the beach club facility. I will say that. So.
Thank you. Brad?
Oh, boy. Yeah, so I guess Amy's point to the fact we had an issue here with unpermitted structure, and now it's back before us again with another piece that's unpermitted. That's a difficult thing to consider. I don't see a real resource area impact that high up the beach, an area that's been used, a lot of human activity for a long time. I'm not sure how to deal with that, reoccurring problem. And so I'd like to hear from the other commissioners and maybe come back to it.
Sophia?
Not ready yet.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, it's a sticky wick. It's a hard one because, being on the board for a couple of years and other applicants come in front of us, and we try to work with them to be the best stewards of all of our lands in the town of Harwich, and then something like this happens. Now, I didn't even realize that part because I didn't know about the history of it, but I understand the motive probably, but unfortunately, some of the things the I's didn't get dotted and the T's didn't get crossed correctly. So it's a tough one to swallow on that part. I still gotta think about things.
Yeah, I think the problem that I'm having is that, for me, it's hard to vote to approve a certificate of compliance when you're not in compliance with the order of conditions which you were granted after you were not in compliance. So I would have trouble, voting to approve a certificate of compliance under this situation.
I agree with that. If something was built without permits, I can't agree with a certificate of compliance or something like that.
Amy?
I have a suggestion on how to move forward. My suggestion is that you remove the offending piece. The commission historically for things that happen like this has fined. You're only allowed really to do a one-time, this is one activity, a one-time $300 fine is what you're limited to. Should they want to keep and or in the spring, put back that piece, they could. So I would recommend that instead of a cert of compliance, potentially that you extend. And then should you want to keep that piece, that you properly apply for with an amended order of conditions. Potentially with additional mitigation. I know you've done extra, but this was done in violation. So instead of that, it's something for you to think of. It sounds like the commission is not looking to move forward on assertive compliance based on what I'm hearing tonight. I mean, we haven't heard from John, but
So, is this still there now?
Pardon me?
Do you take these things up normally, just as a matter of?
Yeah, they're seasonal. Yeah,
It's
So-
a seasonal decking.
Yeah.
You take them away, store them for the
Correct.
winter? Right, so,
Already being dismantled as of this past week until next spring.
but in order to not issue a certificate of compliance now, we would have to issue an extension? That is, we're already 3
you
years
could
out?
issue a certificate of compliance and I could write a letter that go with it saying you can't put back that piece.
Well,
Or they could ask for an extension instead.
I'm more in favor of not doing anything tonight,
Okay?
and waiting until like June, when the season is starting, they've already set stuff up, and then they can show us what they have there. And if they're putting out the same thing again, then we have to deal with, you want a modified order of conditions, and then we deal with that. Otherwise, we look at what they, and if you don't put it out, then we can talk about issuing a certificate of compliance then. It's kind of pointless right now, because they're taking it all down anyway.
Yeah, I'm just seeing how active, what the activity on your permit is, how,
Well, just to put things in
Timeline.
perspective, it is seasonal, as you said, and it's not like you're putting foundation to the ground that's, there permanently. And it's 600 square feet, I think is what we're talking about. And the mitigation area is actually closer to 5,000 square feet over what was approved. So I think there is, in terms of the mitigation ratios are there. I don't think there's any malintent on the part of the ownership there. It's a beach club, there's things going on, and people have different events going on, and I think it was, slip through the cracks. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that, but, I guess what you're saying then in terms of the project would be either, you don't put that little piece of addition here, or come back to you for an amendment to the order to allow that additional area. And I think fundamentally that's what your decision would be.
Yeah, so if I may, without question, it should have been handled differently, and the parties involved know that they should have handled it differently, and in the busyness of getting start up for the season and trying to endeavor to handle a better seating situation down below there. There's a lot of folks, so you probably shared the letter, but a lot of folks who enjoy dining down there, and a table sits stable in the sand, but trying to adjust chairs does not. So we've heard, especially from some of the senior members that have been members for a long time, that like to go down and truly enjoy the beach component of the beach club, that it was problematic for them. So the wrong steps weren't taken to come and bring it to Amy and bring it to this commission for that 15 by 40 in the rush to get the season started up. I know that we're amenable to some of the discussions that we've had with the overage and the delta that we have with the mitigation that's taken place. I think there's an absolute need to continue having this 15 by 40 piece to enhance the environment for the folks that are down there dining and trying to enjoy a meal, which is primarily over the lunch meal period. So I think there's a definite desire to want that for the future, and to work that into what the rest of the piece that's in compliance, and then coordinate the delta on the mitigation if that's acceptable to the commission. So, but there's no question that the folks that were involved that should have taken this forward wasn't done the right way, and for that we're sorry. It's not the right way to do it. We acknowledge that, we know that, and you have our commitment that wouldn't happen again. So,
just so the commission and you're aware, this current permit, the reason I suggest an extension is your permit is only valid till January 3rd, 2024. So,
but there's no plan to change what you see there in front of you. That would be the same intention for what we want to do for the 24 season and beyond. It wouldn't be any change of the geometry of what you see there.
Comments?
Yeah, just to follow up on the mitigation for this permit, I think some folks who are not here don't realize, but it was very much a negotiated number. There was a lot of appetite in the commission to remove the tiki bar because it was put in place with no permit. So I think we settled on a big number
Yeah, 10 to 1, pretty much.
for good reason. So I think that's the way that went. I don't object to the piece if it's properly permitted. I don't see a resource area impact. So it's really how we get there. I can see Jim's point on not wanting to vote on the cert tonight. If we did vote on the cert with the letter, could we revisit mitigation for the new footprint? No. How come?
Need to keep it open. It's kind of, your closing hearing, it becomes more difficult.
Yeah. It's not a big point either way because it's a small footprint. I think I favor what you suggested, and I do favor a single event fine for this, given the history of this happening previously. So that's my preference.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to treat it how we treat every other thing, and, we would typically do that.
So maybe there's a couple of actions here. One is agreeing to issue a fine,
Mm-hmm.
and another is issue an extension. Those are the two things on the table.
Would you
here?
like an extension?
I think that makes sense and gives a chance to kind of figure out how to navigate through this.
So, let's give you a year. I think that's enough time to figure out what we need to figure out. This is already on the table, it's on for a certificate of compliance. I don't see an issue with changing that to an extension request instead, if the commission's okay with that. So 1-year extension.
Just sort of an administrative
Yeah.
question. Are we extending the order of conditions, Amy?
For 1 year.
For 1 year, okay, fine, thank you.
That way they have time if they want to come back to amend, which, I mean, you have the plan already, it should be fairly easy to do.
Okay, now that, I'm fine.
It gives them a little time.
Well, I guess maybe a little straw poll here, is this commission inclined to approve the extra square footage?
I don't favor straw polls here. I mean, you've heard what people had to say here.
Understood,
So
yeah.
I think you should have a pretty good
Okay.
feel, because, people, it sounds too much like people making a commitment when we're not in a position to make a commitment. We'll vote when we have something in front of us.
I appreciate that, but I mean, I think we could turn it around pretty quickly, since the plan's already done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll just say, I see the big benefit of the mitigation that you did compared to the small amount of impact that you have to the resource, so.
Okay.
Take that for what you will.
Thank you.
So, I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay, I will move that we approve an extension of the order of conditions for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2, SE 32-2387 for a period of 1 year.
Discussion.
Do you want a separate motion for the fine?
Well, separate motion, yes. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
One abstention?
No, I just said, I'm sorry,
Okay, 5-0-1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, right. A separate motion for a...
Sure. I'll move that we authorize the issuance of a fine to Wedgemere Harbor Real Estate LLC, 23 Snow Inn Road, for issues on map 8, parcel P2, SE 32-2387, the amount of the fine being $300.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, 501.
Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, sorry. The next available can be our first November meeting. Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
I've never had so many paper clips in my
Yeah,
life
there's
since
a
I've joined the
surplus,
commission,
yes. All kinds,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
No need to.
Well,
Good, how you doing, John?
going pretty well.
That's good.
You got
I think we
exposed
have
to
a
the trustee.
1-minute recess.
I wasn't here, but I'm sure it was a trustee.
I said, I think we have a 1-minute recess.
Penalty box. The Bruins.
All right, take care.
Well, no, yes, that.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is discussion and possible vote for the acceptance of a $300 donation to the Wetlands Revolving Account. Amy?
Yeah, I was contacted by an organization called Ed Odyssey, which is actually a study abroad organization, but they're trying to do more domestic trips for college students to gain experience and have some time out in the field and learn something different other than having to travel abroad for it. So they'd asked if I would teach just 2 hour-and-a-half lessons on shoreline ecology and geology of the Cape for Northeastern University World Scholars students. And I said, sure. And they said, well, what can we pay you? I said, I can't take any payment. I'm just happy to do it. And so on a very rainy, windy Saturday a couple of weeks ago, I did such. Brought him down to Red River Beach. We talked about longshore sediment transport, erosion, accretion of sand, the effects of structures to shoreline processes, and talked about the near shore and shoreline creatures and plants and animals. And they were adamant about giving us something, so I said, well, I can't accept anything, but if you'd like to make a donation, you can make a donation to the Wetlands Revolving Fund, which will help us improve wetlands in town, other wetlands in town. And I told them a little bit about the Herring River study, which is, the RFP is out for. And they were all excited about that, so they, the selectmen voted to accept this at their meeting on Monday, and I would request that you accept it as well.
Absolutely.
It was a lot of fun. I stood in the middle of a very hot but dry bus doing the lecture portion before we all got drenched in the rain. And I was prepared, but despite being told numerous times to dress for the weather, teenagers.
They don't listen, do they?
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing it. I really like doing the educational outreach when I have the opportunity to. It was a Saturday, so,
Nice job.
Great.
thanks.
How much they wanna give us, $300?
Mhm.
There you go, found money.
Keep it up.
I would have done it for nothing, but
Anytime you get money, get it.
So I'll move that we agree to accept the $300 donation
I'll
for the
second that.
Wetlands Revolving Account.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous.
we don't have minutes, so we're a little short this week and scrambling. So we are going to be setting up a process for trying to tackle them. Good news is I hired somebody. The position that was granted as part of the overall town budget was for a part-time conservation, part-time building administrative assistant, one full-time position. And I hired her this week. She'll be starting the 19th. Her name is Kalia Trudeau. She is a fairly recent graduate, but with a lot of experience doing public, being the front face of a department, doing administrative tasks. She has a background in GIS. She's done minutes. I think she'll be a really great addition to our team, and she has, high aspirations going forward, but I think we can help her get her start, and I think she'll be a good positive impact for the building and conservation, so.
Good.
She'll be starting in a couple weeks,
Great.
and one of her main tasks is gonna be helping us catch up on minutes.
Great.
I don't think
Anything else?
Our AmeriCorps member starts next week, Margaret. So that's exciting too. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to, we'll go ahead, finish, and then I'll go next.
Sorry, Alan, I appreciate that.
Sorry.
AmeriCorps Cape Cod asked if we had any area, they needed a location to do their chainsaw training. And I said, well, how about Robbins Pond Conservation Area, where they're continuing to make, where ATVs are continuing to make new passages around the passages that we've already, or the blockages we've already made, so. There's also a number of half-dead trees in that area. So actually, this week, they are in there with an instructor, a certified instructor from Western Mass, learning how to cut trees, but at the same time, trying to stop or curb some of the illegal activities in there. So just wanted to let you know.
They're dragging the trees out and putting them across the trails to block those?
All the trees
Illegal
that I
activity?
show, they're just tearing it up. That's my only problem with it.
I know, but
Um,
if they're cutting down some of those dead oaks, there's a lot of them up in there, lay them across the trail.
The ones I selected were along the trail sides, like
Yeah.
along where the passages were, so instead of what I requested, if possible, is to leave them somehow connected with a hinge so that they're less easy to drag out
Yeah, good
or
idea.
move.
I just had one other public announcement that the governor of the state did a proclamation today that October is Cranberry Month in the state of Massachusetts, and there's a large proclamation there, and they just recognize the fact that all the cranberry growers are unique, family-oriented, large business, and that they're good land stewards of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
We're
so.
definitely unique.
So, yes, but I think Howard's being the first commercial
Yeah.
cranberry bog in the state of Massachusetts, I think we should publicly recognize that and support our cranberry growers in our town.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Governor
suggested,
Healy, thank you, Governor Healy.
if you haven't heard, the town is doing something like, Chatham does pumpkin people in the park over at Kate Gould Park. So Harwich, the 204, wants to do something similar, but have town buildings or residences or anybody else do different pumpkin people in town. And my suggestion on front of Town Hall was to do pumpkin cranberry farmers. The only problem was we can't put anything nice out there. We don't want it to get taken. So if you want to partake in October events around town and do a theme on your property, we're doing that. It's kind
Are
of
they
fun.
life-size?
It can be whatever you want. It doesn't have to be life-size. It can be larger than life.
Are you thinking of a pumpkin patch with very large pumpkins?
I was just thinking like old pair of waders,
Yeah,
like a big pumpkin on top of I don't know.
yeah.
Pitchfork.
Okay.
Make the pumpkin red and make it look like a cranberry.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go.
Big Barry.
And then the big berry. I don't have anything else for you.
Anybody else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
All those in favor?
Hope you feel better, Wayne.
Yeah.